Entrepreneur. He's a handsome young gentleman. He's an entrepreneur. He's a soon-to-be real estate mogul, and he's an ambassador for liberty. Please put your hands together for Baruti Libre Kafele, ladies and gentlemen.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Excellent. To reintroduce myself, my name is Baruti Libre Kafele, and first and foremost, please give the New Jersey Libertarian Party a hand for curating and also organizing this very successful event. Give Jay Edgar a hand also for hooking up the technology for me. So I'm Baruti Libre Kafele, libertarian, and just to let you know, I've been a libertarian, I would say, probably for a long time, and ever since 2012. I graduated from Kane University over in Union, New Jersey, but also not to mention, I also went to Georgetown University during the summer of 2012 because the Fund for American Studies had a program as it relates to economics, politics, limited government, or laissez-faire, or the laissez-faire philosophy, that is. So when I attended a lot of the courses, I started to become influenced by a lot of the ideological frameworks or the trajectory of libertarian thought, for that matter. Whether we talk about private property, whether we talk about individualism, whether we talk about individual rights, whether we talk about limited government, whether we talk about spontaneity of order, whether we talk about the separation of government within private affairs. So all of that started to influence me, and also a lot of it was captivated, and also it makes sense to me because it just never sat well with me to have a government expropriate resources from hardworking individuals to distribute or allocate to another group of people, whether we're talking about people at the top, whether we talk about a lot of the executives of a lot of these corporations that are supposedly too big to fail, or whether we talk about people at the bottom that are unfortunately economically and financially failing. It just didn't make sense to me. If you earn financial gratification from diligence, through resilience, and also through hard work, they're entitled to keeping that. And if you want to donate or distribute that to individuals who are less likely to accumulate that on their own through hard work, or people that need it, then you're entitled to do so through free will. So in essence, voluntarism is definitely something that I also learned about, or also, I would say, influenced me as it relates to me going to Georgetown for that year in 2012. And that's when I started to get introduced to a lot of the scholars like Milton Friedman or Frederick Hayek, Thomas Sowell. Also, we're talking about people like George Ayite, Ludwig von Mises, and the various others. So from reading a lot of these scholars, that's where a lot of them gave me the inspiration in order to give speeches, in order to write, and also to pursue my own destiny as it relates to succeeding within this system that we live in. And also, just to let you know, contrary to popular opinion or contrary to popular belief, a lot of people say, oh, the capitalistic system this, the capitalistic system that. Well, in actuality, I would even argue that in the United States, we've never even had capitalism in the United States. Now you may say, what the hell is he talking about? Yes, we've never had capitalism in the United States. We had crapitalism, cronyism and capitalism amalgamated into one. And also, not to mention in 1776, after the Declaration of Independence, and also not to mention 11 years later, 1787, after the passing of the Constitution, which created the formalities and also created the Union of the United States of America, I would even say that there wasn't capitalism then. You want to know why? Because people that look like me a lot of the time couldn't practice capitalism for obvious reasons. So the thing is that with us being in the new millennium and with us in the 21st century, this should be the time which liberty should prevail. Towards the end of the 21st century, going into the 22nd century, if we're able to work diligently with one another, if we're able to learn about the ideals of liberty, if we're able to learn about the philosophy of liberty, and also just to not get caught up or not get propagandized and indoctrinated into the ideology of socialism, of so-called social justice, whatever the hell that is, communism and anything else, then we could definitely see change and we could definitely see liberty prevail in the 21st century. So if you all are for that, give yourselves a hand and let's make this happen. All right, occupationally, as aforementioned by this eloquent speaker and comedian right here, I'm an entrepreneur within the real estate industry myself. I have my firm Libertas LLC, in which we broker real estate transactions between investors who do not want to have their properties listed on the MLS, and also not to mention ready, willing, and able, motivated buyers and landlords who are looking to acquire properties. Because as far as the MLS, the multiple listing service, the only people that have access to the multiple listed services are real estate agents or real estate representatives for that matter. But you know that in order to become a real estate agent, you have to undergo another governmental regulation? Did y'all know that?
Yep.
Exactly. The real estate industry is controlled and regulated by the New Jersey Real Estate Commission, which is the subsidiary of the Department of Bank and Insurance for the state of New Jersey. Why the hell does one need government if you have a ready, willing, and able buyer and a motivated seller that wants to engage into a voluntary transaction in order to sell their property so that one can enjoy the property, huh? Why should one have to go through that? So like for example, I come from an inner city, Jersey City, New Jersey, myself, and also I have relatives in Newark, East Orange, and various other urban areas within the state of New Jersey. So the thing is this. Of course, evidently and obviously, you have people that are struggling financially. So I have people that call me all the time, oh, Baruti, I want to get into real estate. I cannot just give them an opportunity to be like, hey, just come join me, just work diligently, work strategically, network with one another, find people that want to sell properties, find people that want to purchase properties, engage the transactions, and then get you cut in between. I can't do that. You want to know why? Because first and foremost, you have to pay $400 for a real estate class. $400 for a real estate class in order to learn real estate law, in order to pass that test. You have to pay $100 in order to take the real estate test. And then once you obtain the real estate license, you have to join a real estate union in which it's annually like around between $700 to $1,000 depending on the location you're located within the state of New Jersey, because you have different unions and board associations. And also, not to mention, when you join a brokerage firm, you have to pay for office space. So, yeah, in essence, an estimation like $2,000 in the hole before you even sell your first home. And also, not to mention, in the sales business, you have to work resiliently. You have to work tenaciously. You definitely have to network. You have to be aggressive out here. It's not like you're working the regular job, you're punching in, you're signing in, and then you're getting your guaranteed wage or salary, your minimum wage. And I'm also a critic of minimum wage, evidently, and obviously as a libertarian, and I'll get into why in a couple of minutes. But you cannot do that. You have to work diligently. So the thing is that these anti-competitive laws is definitely paradoxical and contradictory to the so-called conception of capitalism. Do you all agree? Yes. So, exactly, and also not to mention, another aspect of my presentation that I'm going to get into is how governmental regulation in the banking industry and the housing industry catalyzed to the Great Recession that happened 10 to 12 years ago, and also not to mention the other crash which is about to happen, I would say in the next 5 to 10 years or so, or probably less than that. And the thing is that with this being recorded, if things don't change, there will be another crash, and then you all will probably see me as a genius for being Nostradamus as far as with this analysis, or futuristic. Not that I want another crash to happen, but we have to be realistic, because this is the thing right here. And also, not to mention, governmental regulation also prolonged the Great Depression, which ensued, or should I say its inception was around the last week of October of 1929 for that matter. But let's get into the Great Recession right quick. But in order to understand what's going on currently or contemporaneously, one has to study history. Everything has a trajectory. Everything has a trajectory, so we have to study history for that matter. All right. As it relates to the real estate industry for that matter, you have a lot of liberal politicians. And also we need to be careful with these terms, liberalism and conservatism for that matter, because usually people that are for limited government, private property, free markets, voluntarism, people like that, of course we're libertarian, but a lot of the time we're called conservatives. But that's not the case. That's not the case whatsoever, because initially and originally we were called classical liberals for that matter. But the thing is that I was having an argument or a debate with someone, a polemical discussion with someone that's a communist, and then they call me, you sound like a conservative. What the hell am I conserving? If we never had capitalism in this country. What the hell am I conserving? What are you talking about? Which is why when I go on my Facebook page and some of these communists, some of these socialists, some of these so-called social justice warriors want to debate me, I tell them like, look, if you really want to debate me, then this is the thing right here. I value $10,000 of your savings more than the time that I will allocate towards wasting time arguing with you about something that you don't even know what you're talking about. So in essence, you have to compensate me in order to try to argue with me with something of that nature. But let me get back to the subject matter at hand. Okay, a lot of these liberal politicians, they complained about the rate of pre-approvals, especially within, inner city areas, or should I say black or brown communities, because according to statistics of the Federal Reserve, especially in 1992, I think that according to according to statistics as it relates to governmental loans, 61% of African Americans were approved for governmental insured loans, compared to 76% of Caucasians. And also, as it relates to conventional bank loans, the pre-approval rate for blacks were 56%, and also for Caucasians, there was 76%. So that was in 1992. So of course, liberal politicians, and also, even when I say liberal and conservative, I'm not just talking about Democrat and Republican, because you have liberal Republicans and also you have conservative Democrats. Like George Walker Bush was a liberal Republican, whether y'all believe me or not, or it is what it is. But anyway, so the thing is this. All right, so the thing is this. A lot of the politicians capitalize on these statistics. So when they capitalize on the statistics, they say, dang, we need more equity and more equality as it relates to the pre-approval rates, whether the person could afford to purchase a property or not. We need more equity and more equality as it relates to that. And also, not to mention, if we were to that's in 1992. Also, the Community Reinvestment Act was passed in 1977, and also the guarantee equality as it relates to banks issuing loans to applicants who are looking to get a loan in order to purchase a property. So the thing is that what that means when you have a governmental policy that's passed, in essence, and also, not to mention, there's supposedly inequality within the free market. There's supposedly equality in the free market, and then you have governmental intervention. What you have as it relates to that is quotas. So what we saw was a passing of quotas, in essence, to ensure that African Americans or Latinos or Asians were to have an equal opportunity as it relates to getting a pre-approval in order to purchase a home. But this is the thing right here. It caused a disincentive for a lot of these banks in order to issue these loans. You want to know why? Because banks, when they issue loans for the purpose of having a return on their investment and also interest. So the thing is this, if you're issuing a loan to someone to purchase a home and they cannot afford the home, then what happens? The loan becomes delinquent. So when the loan becomes delinquent, then the property becomes confiscated, and in essence, it becomes a deficit for the bank, or should I say the private lender for that matter. So the situation at hand was this. This created an incentive for private lenders and also banks to issue something called subprime loans, or subprime mortgages. So with subprime loans, that's when you can charge interest of close to like 1% or 1%, 2%, 3%, 4 or 5% for that matter, for anyone that's looking to purchase a property. So when you charge something like this, what it does is it creates an incentive, a perverse incentive for someone that can not normally afford a property under basic circumstances in order to apply to purchase a property. So with these subprime loans, a lot of the time you have adjustable rates. You have adjustable rate mortgages, ARM. So with adjustable rate mortgages, a lot of the time, the situation at hand is that you get an adjustable rate mortgage and you only pay the interest rate probably for the first 2 years or first 2 to 4 years. So once you pay that interest rate, and then eventually once you get hit with the amortization payments that you have to make on a monthly basis, they'll of course or evidently be higher than the interest rate that one normally would have to pay. So eventually, once the applicant that has been approved for this loan, knowing that they cannot financially afford the property under normal circumstances, once they get that approval, then what happens is that they eventually cannot afford to make payments, and then from there, the property becomes delinquent. The bank confiscates the property. But also, not to mention, we have to understand that around the time of the 2000s, around the time of the early 2000s, all the way up until 2007 and 2008, Fannie Mae and also Freddie Mac started to purchase a lot of these loans as well. And it's called the secondary market as it relates to real estate. If you all ever heard of that before, have you all heard of the secondary market? Exactly. So the thing is that as it relates to the secondary market, at first they only owned 2% or purchased 2% of the mortgages on the market, and then that grew to eventually 33% in 2006. So what happened was this: a lot of these politicians, they began to superimpose a lot of this mockery, and also a lot of these postulations stating that there's inequality as it relates to pre-approvals, and also there's inequality as it relates to the mortgage commitments, which is the prerequisite as it relates to loans getting issued. So eventually, what happened was you started to see a whole lot of people that couldn't afford properties under normal circumstances actually begin to purchase properties, but eventually these properties will end up getting foreclosed. And also, not to mention, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac or traded on the stock market. So they will get they will receive their funding from private investors, but then again, with the funding that they'll receive from private investors, they'll get used to purchase a lot of these mortgages on the secondary market, to the point in which the investments that they were receiving from the private investors on Wall Street was not enough to offset them purchasing a lot of these delinquent loans, and eventually that led to the bubble burst. And a lot of these banks ended up becoming too big to fail. What do we talk about? Wells Fargo, which was bailed out with $25 billion. JP Morgan Chase, bailed out with $25 billion. Or we talk about Bank of America, bailed out with $45 billion. Or if we were to talk about AIG, which was bailed out with $50 billion. All of taxpayers' money, because they're supposedly too big to fail, when in all actuality, I think that one of the solutions to this problem is for buyers who can afford the property to purchase the property, and for a seller who wants to sell a property to sell a property, and also to engage into an exchange that way in order for progress to get made within the economy. Voluntarism over coercion. I need to drink some water. With me being in the real estate industry, I'm noticing a lot of governmental intervention into the free market, and it's definitely problematic, because it's one thing to study it theoretically or philosophically, but it's another thing to experience this on the daily basis, with it being problematic. With it being problematic as it relates to all of the costs that you have to pay, all of the regulations that one have to undergo. It should be that simple, and whenever you complicate something, then what it does is it just causes more problems. Like, for example, when you have anti-competition laws within the market, what you're doing is creating more unemployment. Because the thing is this, I have people contacting me because they want to get involved in real estate as a real estate sales associate. But if they don't have an opportunity because they can't afford to pay a lot of the regulational fees or taxes, then that adds to the unemployment rate. Don't you all agree? Yeah. Exactly. That adds to the unemployment rate. And let's say they don't want to get into the real estate industry, they want to get into another industry. Well, they have to deal with another anti-competition law within that other industry. There are some industries, like the payment processing industry, in which you have to, especially in the state of Idaho, in which you have to pay $200,000 for an application for your idea. $200,000. Most people don't even make $200,000 a year. And according to Bernie Sanders, if you make close to that, you're in the top 1%. So, exactly. So the thing is this, if we want a better economy in which we have people volunteering with one another to engage in commerce with incentives, then what we need to do is limit the government's intervention into the free market so that progress could get made. And then if there isn't progress and if there are problems, then the market could take care of itself. Because when we have socialism or government intervention, we have the incentive problem, we have the incentive problem, we have the totalitarian problem, and we have the calculation problem, and we don't need any of these problems, and we need to solve our problems ourselves. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
I'll ask you one simple question.
Yes, sir.
When are you running for office?
So I often feel compelled to explain how policies that are supposed to benefit poor people end up hurting them the most. And I'm a fourth generation real estate professional, so I've seen it for many, many generations, 4 generations. But what happened, and maybe you can speak to this a little bit, is that a lot of poor people were buying houses in the inner cities.
Yes.
And those are the houses that were foreclosed. And those people were renting before, and they could afford to pay the rent. Mm-hmm. When they couldn't afford to pay the mortgages on their homes, they were forced out, leaving huge blight in the inner cities that made them dangerous, made them difficult places to live. And then the investors came in, bought up those properties, made Jersey City a prime example.
Oh, yes, it's the Wild Wild West on the East Coast.
And it's just grown exponentially, and now there isn't affordable housing for poorer people in those areas.
Right.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Exactly, and this is my viewpoint right here. I know that I was speaking expeditiously, so I'll slow it down a little bit during the question and answer. My thing is this: if you cannot afford something at the moment, then you have to work strategically and diligently so that you can afford it eventually. But the thing is that the government enacts policies for the purpose of equal opportunity. But Milton Friedman said this best. If I get this correctly, I'm going to try to quote him. If you put equality before freedom, then you get none of it. But if you put freedom before equality, then you'll have freedom and equality, for that matter.